I am Carmen Fernández. I am the managing director of CIJ. It's a Youth Integration Center institution in Mexico. We have 43 years made services about prevention, treatment, and research of drug abuse. Alcohol and tobacco is included. And we are member of the World Federation Against Drugs and ICA and the Vienna Committee of ODS and other networks in America and Ibero-America. So I will talk about harmful use of alcohol in America. As you know, there are 2 billion people that consume alcohol in the world. 76.4 million people have problematic use, and harmful use of alcohol causes 2.5 million deaths each year in all the world. Latin America and all America is one of the most consumption countries in the world, between 6-7% and 10% in general populations. The country that higher consumption is Canada, and the less is Salvador. You can see the risk in the world about data of WHO organization, and Mexico is one of the countries that there are more risks in the world, and then many countries in Latin America there are risks of consumption, accidents behind alcohol consumption, and violence consumption is very problematic about the use of alcohol. These are the prevalence of alcohol consumption by sex in many countries in America. You can see Mexico. Here, this is the percentage. Chile and Canada are the higher. So the American is all the countries higher of another countries in the world. The patterns of alcohol consumption are higher, and alcohol relates with many deaths, especially in young people, and disorders by use of alcohol, especially about violence in the family and violence in the street. Alcohol as the main risk factor of disease in the whole region. In Mexico, 27 million people drink with this pattern. These are the data of women. In the young people, with our national survey of addictions, the data are our national survey, from 2002 to 2008, increase in men and increase in women, especially in young women of the higher school and primary school. In the data of CIJ, our institution of treatment, the user of, we see the patients of first time we see. Also, the young people is a higher consumption, and women and men and young people use the same percentage of incidents in which one or both patterns wrong. This is the data of violence, victims, and abusers in 10 countries in Latin America. You can see Mexico. Some data are not available, but in general, women is very violent in Brazil. Not me. It's a very good. But there are many violence in Brazil, and the male are more abusive than female. but it's a very big problem. Other relationships is the factor related to relationships in Mexico is if the people use tobacco and alcohol, there are more violence, physical violence, psychological violence, and sexual violence if consumed than if not consumed. One research in the organization that we work is about the one group of women. The couple is not user, and the second group, the couple user. So in all the data, you can see that the violence ones is more in the group 2, with couple user, and the actual violence is more in the group user, and the use alcohol of the woman is higher also if the couple, the partner, use alcohol. Also, women use more medical and illegal drugs if his partner is use of alcohol. Violence and depressions associated with alcohol consumption in Mexico, and 20% of income to emergency rooms are caused by alcohol violence. And as I said, the young people death is the first problem for death for the young people in Mexico. The risk of violence-related injuries increased 14 times if there was alcohol consumption. About the 50% of homicidal deaths in relation with alcohol consumption, and it is estimated that those with alcohol dependency are 2.3 times more prone to depressions. Depression in women and depression in men are different because the woman depressed because effectiveness, and the man depressed because his work, because a problem of his work. The more effective policies that works to reduce alcohol consumption, and this one was an research in Mexico, which policies reduce the harmful use of alcohol. And as you see, tax increases is the best in the world and in Mexico also. Supply reductions with health regulations, prohibitions of advertising, and combination of this with brief interventions for problem drinkers and bread allergies. The test of alcohols on the people when drive is one of the most policies, actions that you can make for reduce the harm use of alcohol. In May 2021, 2 years ago, in 2010, in the WHO organizations was a very big consensus of 193 countries to reduce harmful use on the world. In the next year, in 2011, Brazil and Mexico was selected for leaderships in Americas. In the PAHO meeting, in the regional meetings. And the recommendation of this group, the regional meeting of PAHO, was this: price and tax policies. The price increase impacts the population and problem user achieving reduction in consumption. Up to 30% of population with higher income consumes the 53% of alcohol available. And the actions in Mexico was proposed modified the norms, the legal norms, and the health minister may propose tax and pricing policies to help manage the sale of alcohol beverage. And in Mexico, the Minister of Health integrate intersectional and interdisciplinary group of experts attend alcohol and drug use for change the law about the norms of alcohol use. Another recommendation is limited alcohol availability, determine schedules and density of outlets with limited access to substance. For example, establish a ban on alcohol sales in Cape Ponce, part of the school, for example, and not available 24 years old, whole day, not in the night, and not in the federal highways. Other recommendation was modifying the environment where alcohol is consumption. Respect the minimum age to consume and enhance security in places where it is consumed. In Mexico, the law prohibited to sell young people less than 18 years old. Strengthen citizen complaint mechanisms to bring down the sale of alcohol to minors. Minor is less than 18 years old. Promote campaigns to prevent. We are made many campaigns in restaurants, in bars, in the places who sells alcohols are many in Mexico. And inform the public about the use. Alcohol consumption in children causes alterations in neural modulations, particularly of the cerebral cortex and decision-making process. The people finish the development at 21 or 22 years old. So that is very important that the minors, people, the young people don't drink. Strengthen the regulatory and legislative frameworks. Powers were guaranteed to the National Commission Against Addictions in Mexico. Is very big. This commission have the responsibility to reduce the harmful use of alcohol with an expert and interdisciplinary group. Other recommendation is to provide early intervention for hazardous drinkers. Counseling and brave intervention given in primary care has been effective in reducing harmful use and alcohol, particularly in early cases. We have a cognitive behavioral therapy for 5 or 10 seasons, and it's a program that evaluates with effectiveness. And universal and homogeneous model will be adopted for the detections of brief intervention services in primary health handling. The last recommendation was establish measures to prevent driving under the influence of alcohol. Test alcohol test randomly performed at strategic points, driver's license suspension. There are many in the Mexico City and other cities of the country. There are many points. And when it's holidays on December, holidays for Christmas, there are many points open 24 hours a day. The Minister of Health will determine the low levels of alcohol and zero tolerance in public transport. The drivers of public transport and the pilots of a flight, there is zero tolerance if they mark some alcohol in the test. They lost his license. The program in Mexico, driving with alcohol, this alcohol test, it is implemented by the Ministry of Public Security in Mexico City. And in 2011 in Mexico City, 15,700 people were sent to prison for elevated levels of blood alcohol when drinking. Increased perception of risks of the population, increased perception of risks overall of the parents, and parents can control his sons, his children, and 40% of car accidents were reduced. Very effective actions. CIJ, our institution, made many campaigns, prevention campaigns. This one of them, the name of campaign is, if you drink, assure yourself and don't take the car. It's for prevent accidents overall in young people. The evaluation of this program are good. More than 3 drinks for occasions before the intervention was this percentage, and after the interventions the percentage reduced than 3 drinks, 5 drinks, and 9 drinks for occasions, 0 after intervention. So it's very effective as the give information to young people. We write a book, and with this book we make workshops with in the schools, in the middle and high schools, and the book is young people and alcohol in Mexico, an emergency problem in women, because the increase in young women in Mexico. And we made these workshops in all the schools in the country. I want to say that we are many actions against legalization of marijuana. This time in my country are elections for the presidents. The 1st of July is the elections, and the left parties promote the legalization of marijuana. And we made many things for against that. One of these is write a book with the evidence against marijuana legalization, evidence in health, in social problems, and evidence in accidents in the young people. We recollect many studies in many countries in the world, and alcohol and tobacco give us many problems, not only for the health and many expense of the Minister of Health in budget. Also many social problems, many deaths. So we don't have a third drug legal, a third legal drug. We are against legalization. CIJ has done extensive campaigns against legalization, and we organize a World Congress every day in our country. Every year in our country. Every year in 2009, in the World Congress Experience Based on Evidence, CIJ used the call to action in favor of prevention against marijuana legalization, seen and supported by 7 international networks. A few of them are here in this Congress, from Africa, from United States, and also from America, and Brazil, of course, signing this call to action. So the next international Congress will be held in Cancun, in Mexico. Is about addiction caring in a human rights framework. And the last Congress was Sven Olof there, and Michel Perron, the president of ONG's Committee of Vienna, and many specialists of many parts of the world. We hope that you can come this year to my country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carmen. Before we leave the stage, we have time to take two questions, if you want to, or comments that you want to add. But I just want to say briefly that it's important that our expectation most probably was to hear about very hard drugs and violence in Mexico. The importance of this presentation is that because alcohol is socially acceptable, it's easily accessible and so on, people don't think it can lead to the type of violence that we've seen there. In South Africa, we know during long weekends, Easter and Christmas vacation, 500 to 1,000 people will die in road accidents where the driver was driving under the influence of alcohol. So we are trying to use some of the recommendations that Carmen has talked about. It's a serious issue. There are many cases of homicides involving the police, involving the soldiers, involving other people who have access to guns. But usually when they do postmortems, they find that the main person had been under the influence of alcohol. So alcohol, though socially acceptable, leads to a lot of violence in society. Any questions or comments to Carmen?
Yes, thank you for a very interesting presentation and the work that you're doing in Mexico. You indicated that one of the evidence-based strategies was to increase price on alcohol products. In the United States, as you may know, that's been very difficult at a national state level because of the opposition of alcohol issue manufacturers. And so, can you comment on what has happened in Mexico or other Latin American countries trying to use that strategy?
It's very proud to do it also in Mexico because the interest of economic interest of alcohol workers. But anyway, the Minister of Health is negotiating with the alcohols to increase the tax. It's high, the tax in Mexico, but not enough. We need to increase at least 50% more. It is very difficult, these negotiations, and we want to get off of the media, electronic media, the publicity, because it works very well in tobacco. No more commercial, no more spots in electronic media, not in TV, not in radio, but in alcohol it's very difficult to make that the interest of many money.
It looks like it's difficult all over the world. Last question for Carmen. Thank you.
I live in a state in the United States, Colorado, that is thinking about legalizing marijuana in the fall of this year. And one of the main arguments that people give for legalizing marijuana is that it would reduce violence in Mexico. And so I was interested to see your second to last slide or so on that subject. Would you comment more on that and how you would respond to that?
Yes, the evidence is when the marijuana is illegal for the young people, consumption, use more. That's the first argument. The second is in Mexico, 2% of the young people use marijuana. In Canada, for example, there are 52% of young people. Sweden is the last country with consumption in the young people marijuana because it's the first country against the drug use. And in Mexico, if we research about what happened in other countries, about the accidents, for example, and in California, in France, there are the double of risk if with marijuana driving that much. That's the second argument, because if with alcohol the young people die, imagine with marijuana. Certainly more young people will be dying with this.
So thank you very much, Carmen. Just want to add that cannabis is a problem in sub-Saharan Africa. It's the second after alcohol in terms of substance abuse, and it's affecting mostly young people. And that's where we're learning from some of the interventions used in Latin America. I'd like to thank you very much for your presentation. From Mexico, we move to Brazil, and we'll hear from the Brazilian Humanitarians in Action. Carlos will hand over to you. Thank you. We need to move in faster with a round of applause. I'm not sure what he's going to say, but it's some action to say no to violence associated with drugs. We don't want to surrender as organizations.
First, I have to thank for the invitation, and especially thanks for Nina, my friend Nina, to bring me to this meeting. My name is Carlos Dias. I'm from Brazil. I am 52 years old, and I think that it's better to my introduce to you is like a philosopher. I'm a member of Brazilian Academy of Philosophy. I was a state representative in Rio de Janeiro since 1999 and 2003. And I was a labor secretary of the city of Rio de Janeiro, and was a member of State Board of Education of Rio de Janeiro. I think that's okay. I'll talk about the importance of saving the human essence. I have to say to you that I don't have a great fluency in English. I write my speech, and I count with your patience and attention, and I apologize if I do something wrong while I'm talking. Okay? The approach I intend to deal with this paramount subject focuses on human being transcendence. In other words, the everlasting belief in the Creator and Supreme Ruler of the universe, that is to say, God. It may seem odd to some branches of renowned scientific or philosophical schools of thought that mankind is the outcome of the creation, that human being is neither more nor less a creature, and that its incomparable and inalienable dignity comes from the condition of being God's creator. Over centuries, man has been essentially and systematically searching for getting hold of this exclusive and natural vocation. Being so, the transcendent dimension of human person must be the essence and underlying principle of all the social life. There is nothing in the social life and its subsequent meanings able to deny or fail to recognize that the human beings are responsible subjects with active intelligence, consciousness, and will. From this understanding, from these opened and ultra-high conditioned issues, our anthropological and philosophical vision of existence, as well as well as of human life projection in the world. Grounded in this deep base density, we can never admit or advocate that throughout history, any achievement or hope performed by human beings might be distorted by mirror image of this vocation or by theories that set limits to man's craft. Human beings must be understood as a whole, that is to say, through not only their material dimension, but also through their spiritual dimension. They are living creatures provided with subjectivity, peculiar and unrepeatable character, whose story is not comparable to any other. As a result, human freedom has to be oriented in the first place toward choices related to personal property and common welfare. It seems irrational to take the option of physical, mental, and spiritual destruction, since such frame of mind has nothing to do with freedom. However, it's not a simple connection, inasmuch as some social conduction codes, which govern some people, lives, institutions, and even social policies, state different parameters for human life. Therefore, the option of good is not a trivial act, as some might judge as a hirement to the human condition itself. That's why it seems to me very important to emphasize the unique and irreplaceable role of family. Human beings are profoundly shaped by a familiar pattern and the environment they live in. Family is the first shelter we have, an institution whose identity, duration, and continuance are grounded on love. Nation should further and protect family instead of legislate against this sacred institution, sociologically confirmed as a foundation of society itself. It is worth remembering that family organization is earlier than of the state itself. Therefore, it is important to notice that the success of society is not defined only by a material progress, but first and foremost by the set of values that the society embraces and where it founds its growth. These inalienable values, such as protection of human life in all its stage, from the conception to natural death, protection of childhood, of their innocence, as well as protection of youth, special attention towards those who suffer all sorts of restrictions, protection of the natural family formed by a man and a woman, promotion of truth and justice. A society heading towards improvement of justice and peace will certainly serve the truth and will never cut off human transcendence. For treating human beings differently is a false attempt to being someone else's creator, an unfaithful endeavor of turning people to things and utensils destined to use and disposal. All growth and progress include all methods of fight evil, should be directed to promote the mankind's good. The world is in need of a pure moral judgment of measures and improvement issues from progress and technology. Briefly, nothing can compete, open or covertly, for destruction of life, or in a cynical expression called the required amputation of harm reduction, which in fact only comes to lever to complete destruction or consolidate the circles extremely painful for people, for family, and for society. Human being is the highest expression of the Creator and of life. Where a single creature has no dignity, no water has folly. There is no doubt that the world lives in an economic moral crisis. It is a crisis which stems from the meaning of existence. A world that has given up tomorrow as a permanent value, a world that avoids a real confrontation with crime, is a highly fertile soil to discriminalization, prosperity, to possession, trading, and use of drugs. Democracy, freedom, and conscious choices are not to be linked to drugs. Of course, drug dealers use democracy and freedom in their gruesome false advertising. It is another great cruel manipulation of public opinion, constantly being held hostage by a unique vision funded by a powerful, financial, and unashamed segment eager of huge profits. This is for certain an enormous problem, whose origin is neither economic nor political, but whose source can be found in a cultural background rotten to the core. I mean, the genesis of drug infamy is the abject failure of basic universal moral principles. Thus, the world needs guidelines and actions that represent position in the cultural field rather than programs or actions aiming at economic reforms. I would like to conclude by suggesting 4 points intended to rescue the true human identity. The first is to confront the attempts to removing or easing the idea of the human transcendence. If we succeed in doing so, we have a chance to restoring a spiritual morality. The second is to face the struggle to retain material possession and worldly ownership, which lead humanity to the morbid craving of wealth and power at any price. A fantasy able to deceive us from the truth of our existence, its earthly finitude. The third point is suppressing the abnormal tendency deep-rooted among us to despise and ignore the poor, the sufferers, the sick, and the disabled. Start work in favor of another dedicated to justice where we can make a healthy exercise of solidarity, recovering the loss of identification with the other. The fourth point is to fight against contemporary cynicism, kind of power of a force that is established among us, that invades and disfigures proposed the word stated, making the society a place of uncertainty and light. And how to achieve this goal? How to do it? By restoring the value of truth, which involves educational work and life example. Thanks for attention.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Philosophers normally talk much longer than you did, but thank you very much for the short presentation. I have a few questions and comments, but I would like to give the audience a chance to ask questions. And Carlos did say, Mina, you'll join him on the stage to understand,
Okay,
to deal with the questions, yes.
it's better to understand.
So, who wants to come with the first comment or question? Whilst you're thinking of questions, I'm very impressed by this presentation because in sub-Saharan Africa, particularly in South Africa, we have an equivalent movement called moral regeneration. This movement is saying we're not looking at drugs to deal with drugs. We're not looking at very scientific things, but we're looking at the truth within society. What are those values that used to sustain society before that we have lost? Are we now failing to communicate certain values to young children, to the youth, and so on? So this approach is tapping into the domain of spirituality and becomes very relevant in terms of therapy that we do with the young people and so on. When you look at various organizations like the World Psychiatric Association, the American Psychiatric Association, and so on, they now have a section on spirituality and mental health. And part of that is to tap into some of the values that Carlos talked about. Over to you.
So your question is...
No, I'm just saying it's happening, it's coming out and being recognized. But I was just asking the question. No, there's no question. I was making...
No, I understood what Solomon said, and thank you for... Okay.
Do you have a question?
Or comment?
Now, in a sense, we all are aiming for a sort of spiritual revival. How to produce it in a society whose values are absolutely against that sort of revival, where pleasure comes first. Pleasure has to be today, cannot be tomorrow. How can you recuperate a human being out of that condition? What is the actual plan that we ought to insert ourselves?
I think that the actual practice that it not belong for institution. It belongs for all of you. And we start this movement in our family, and we have to discuss if we are living in a world that we can left to our children. And we are seeing that anyone has is not critical, especially critical for the thing that's going, I think, that out of your house. But I think that's not really, because we have to the culture has in the house, we have to, how can I say, cultivar no sentido da expressão de ter.
Acaba de falar que aí eu vou comentar bastante.
Para ficar melhor, eu só queria dizer que as pessoas precisam cultivar na família, e essa transformação é que chega à sociedade, não é o contrário. We are expelling the out of the family, transforming, external transformer is coming on our
Okay, I will try to translate what Carlos is saying. that the movement in his vision has to come from the family, from inside the family, and then it goes to society as a whole. But I want to permit, because as Carlos, yes, identified himself from a humanitarian Brazilian Humanitarians in Action, that's our organization. I want to complement that. It's true, it has to come from the family and go to society. But what do you do in a society like the Brazilian, or the Peruvian, or the Venezuelan, like in Latin America, where most families don't even have a father, because the father left, or the woman works all day, and the children are by themselves, and they come from school and there is nobody to wait for them. So in all those cases, it's not only from the family to society. It would be the ideal family to society, but it has also to come from with the aid of schools. So in the school, when the teachers see those children, the teachers in any subject have to give another sense. What Carlos stresses all the time is transcendency. The human being, the child, the youngster, to feel that he's more than just to eat, to have sex, to go to a movie. That he has to be somebody and do something, not for himself, then for others. What do you do only with schools and only with families? No. You can do that with social groups, you can do that through sports, you can do that with theater, with art. It has to be a movement, slowly, slowly, the society, to know that each person can aid in that, can do something, can plant a seed to that. So the fact that he is in such a gathering and we are talking about that is already a seed for that. Okay.
And I want to say something. We have to discover again that our society is made from the religion values that we are rejecting. We are constructing a society that don't have permanent values. We lose I think that the sacred things that life is. The human being is not something that comes from the street of other place, that not from God. We are very careful about the sea, the birds, the trees, but I think that our species is, I think that can't continue if we are treating us like this. Okay.
Yes, last question. I wonder, are you an NGO? How are you being organized?
No, I'm from BAHA, that's Brazilian Humanity in Action, and I have a straight with a Catholic Church. I study I do many work with the Catholic Church, and then my kind of thing that I think is made by the many study that Catholic project in philosophy and theology.
May I ask, are you a single person who is having this Brazilian Humanitarians in Action? Or are you a group of people?
No, I have to. I understood. I try to.
But we're trying to facilitate a little bit.
All right.
No.
Well, I don't understand how you work.
What do you want to ask? Do you want to ask him how he's doing the work?
Yeah.
How the group does the work?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
I work with Mina in Brazilian Humanity, and I work with groups in the Catholic Church. Okay.
So it's not one man.
I made me clear.
It's a group.
Excuse me.
It's a big movement that's making an intervention.
Thousands of people or hundreds of people, where we come across to thousands of people south of Peru.
Thank you. In relation to what you're saying in terms of looking at human values and family values, I'm concerned that what I observe in some countries, this is subject to manipulation. We do work in Bolivia, and the Bolivian president talks about returning to values, returning to indigenous values, talks about the Pachamama and all of the spirit and the trees and whatever else. And then they say, well, we should also allow these poor Indians to use coca leaves as part of this movement to go back to our indigenous roots because of these Spaniards who came and colonized us. And yeah, I understand that even the president, Hugo Chavez, talked about the Pachamama a couple months ago in a speech he gave. And there is concern, I think, and genuine concern that some of these notions are being used by people who want to legalize drugs in terms of a return to an indigenous culture, a past that was there. And why are we persecuting these individuals? I don't know if this is clear to you, but...
No, it's pretty clear, but I would say that I'm based on our societies from the Christians, okay? The Occidental society. And the values that I have referenced is a Catholic values. And I'm talking about that. I respect the things that you say and even Evo Morales, but I don't agree with these values. I'm saying the values that I agree, and I have to, and I think that we have to be a new guideline for, not a new, but a return to be a guideline for the society. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to Carlos again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. We have a very fast-moving plane from Mexico to Brazil. We are now landing in Peru, and we'll call upon a young colleague, Piero, to give us information about his organization and how they are saying no to drugs, how they are refusing to surrender as an organization. Over to you.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be here together with you to talk about how can we work together with grassroots organizations. My name is Piero Ponce. I am economist. I'm working as project coordinator for the Information and Education Center for the Prevention of Drug Abuse. We are a Peruvian NGO working for almost 26 years in the fight against drugs. I'd like to take the chance, as well as my previous colleague, to thank our executive director for inviting me and sharing on behalf of our organization about our experience with you. Well, to start, we're going to talk about how to prevent violence and involvement, particularly of youth, because youth in Peru are highly involved in this drug chain, not only because of the alcohol abuse, but actually because they're getting involved in drug trafficking. That's the main issue for us. We are facing high rates of alcohol abuse, but we are also facing thousands of youngsters being involved in producing, in trafficking. Hundreds of them are in jails, all because they were involved in drug trafficking. I am glad, however, 2 weeks ago I had the chance to see that a young woman entrepreneur who was being trained in one of our programs said gladly to a radio interview that she decided to leave the production of coca leaf. Let's remember that coca leaf is the main raw material for producing cocaine, right? So in that sense, she stated that she decided to leave that. She was trained by us. She decided to come up with her business plan, and now she's coming up with her own business, a illicit business. And she said that on the radio. So thousands of people in a valley that mainly produces coca heard that it is possible a new way, there's also a positive way for development. In this sense, let's take a look at how drug trafficking impacts Peru, first of all. As you can see, there are many river valleys which are outlined in blue, we can realize that the main extensions of coca leaf production are in the high rainforest valleys. This means that coca leaves are mainly produced in the Peruvian rainforest. So the rainforest is, let's say, to the east, but then the cocaine goes to the coast either for going outside, let's say to the north, as you can see, to the border with Ecuador, and furthermore to the US or Europe, and also it goes through the rainforest, let's say to the route farther eastern to Brazil, to Bolivia, in order to reach again those international and currently regional markets, because some countries in Latin America are increasing the consumption of illicit drugs, such as cocaine. We are very concerned about the limits, for example, between Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia, because it's a real rainforest, it's a real jungle there. So if there's no state present there with education, with health, it's very improbable that we can deal with that easily. So we recommend that the state has a more active role in those areas. This drug trafficking leads to many difficulties, for example, poverty among crop producers. Even though people think or they believe that coca leaf producers may gain more money, actually it doesn't happen. If you go to those valleys, they lack of basic infrastructure, they lack of education, and all the money they gain actually is not really invested in positive things. Furthermore, when we look at children and youth being involved, we realize that they do not only produce, but also get involved in transporting, in trafficking. They run several kilometers, they go through the highlands in order to reach the main, let's say, local markets for further transporting cocaine. Some businesses, legal businesses, are actually in very bad conditions because of illicit businesses that do money laundering. So as you know, cocaine economy puts this illicit money in the market, in the economy, and then legal businesses such as hotels, restaurants, they face that damage when they are legal. Finally, the community has a culture of illegality, which means mainly on corruption, on those anti-values, right, that will not lead at all to development. Who we are? We are working for almost 26 years as an NGO, as a Peruvian institution. We have been promoting legality, we have been promoting development through different education, information, and promotion strategies. Our institution thinks that the main lines of action have to confront the drug problem. This chain is very complex, so we have to work in each part of this chain. For example, we need to work towards preventing or stopping cultivation, production, trafficking, and consumption. We prevent the involvement, particularly of children and youth, in this process. Our mission is to promote a culture of legality, because we believe that law enforcement and democratic values are the basis for ensuring a sustainable development far away from what that drug trafficking aims to impose. Our vision is that communities, Peruvian communities, can live in this culture of legality, in peace, in development, and that we can achieve a collective life in a positive way. So as you can see, we work mainly with children, with youth. We do several seminars. I'm going to give a couple of examples later on about these issues. But what I want to emphasize is that we work mainly in the rainforests and highlands in Peru, where we see a lot of this production and trafficking of the cocaine. So our work actually involves 4 areas that I want to also give a couple of examples. First of all, we work on public incidents among authorities and grassroots leaders, because we need to generate the partnerships necessary for coming up with projects, for coming up with ideas, and more importantly, for having the support of the local communities that we want to work with. Secondly, we run communication strategies and we sensitize, we inform about the consequences of this drug trafficking, and also how can we prevent it, and we use several channels for that purpose. We also we promote community youth actions. That means youth are agents of change, so they need to have an active role. They are not just children, they are not just sons, sisters. They are not just future citizens, let's say future citizens. They are already taking an active role and they can do that very well. And finally, we think that entrepreneurial spirit is also a very positive indicator for promoting positive development. So let me talk about the public incidence area. What we do on this. As I said, it's important for us to develop partnerships. For instance, one of our main actors are local governments, municipalities. We get in touch with them. We need to provide them with trust. They need to believe in us. We set up partnerships. For example, they provide us locals. Let's say we can get an office inside the municipality. Why is that so important? Is that only because we want to save some money? It's because we need the support of the mayor. Otherwise, in rural areas where most of the coca leaf is being produced, we will face a lot of, we will not face the support we need. So we need to talk first with local authorities, grassroots leaders, among others. Last week I got some good news from one of our community promoters. She was, 2 years ago, we decided to sign a partnership with a local government in the rainforest, and they gave us an office. So we have been working together with the municipality, technically supporting them. We have been joining seminars, several trainings, and finally, they achieved, like the mayor invited our NGO to facilitate some process for, we call this budget appraisal, which means we are training, we are helping them to come up with new project ideas for the community. This means that now they believe on our vision. They don't see us as an enemy. Like before they said, okay, CEDRO is going to change our minds, they will talk very bad about coca leaf, about our traditions and everything else, and now they say no, CEDRO is a very important actor, let's give them the possibility to train us as well, and let's come up with new projects focused on youth. So, what we have so far in these 26 years are activities in more than 3,000 communities, as you can see, technical assistance to several institutions, particularly municipalities, but also high schools. I have to emphasize high schools because there we can work together with secondary youngsters, not only primary, and there we can start up with this entrepreneurial spirit. We can put in them those values and that vision that will make them become good citizens. We have been implementing youth centers. For example, we provide some musical instruments. You don't need to do like, the work doesn't need to be that complex with youth. You can come up with musical instruments, you can come up with dances, you can come up with some games, you can do some trainings about sexuality, you can talk about any issue that a youngster wants to hear. And with that, you can get their trust. And with that, they can work with you and they will be the future heroes. Like, they will talk about the importance of promoting a culture of legality. Furthermore, we've been working with the church as well. We've been promoting also alternative crops in different, particularly in the rainforest. For instance, a couple months ago, an association of cacao bean producers got in touch with the Peruvian Association for Exports, and they are now developing a business plan, which means that dozens of producers, of former coca leaf producers, will now fully enter into coca bean production. That's very important for us because it will finally leave this illicit activity. By the way, more than 95% of coca leaf production goes to cocaine. Even though authorities aim to say that our traditional values, that we drink tea with that, okay, but that's less than 5%, right? So, furthermore, we have been promoting this kind of alternative illicit activities, and then we have been also training armed forces because they're very important. Armed forces are probably one of the few representatives, because in rural areas, you will not find big universities, you will not find big highways. What you will find is hopefully a high school, hopefully a military camp, that aims to provide security to the area. We also run communication strategies, both from the traditional and non-traditional channels. For example, which are traditional channels? Let's say radio, TV. What happens in rural areas? We don't have TV. We don't have internet either. So what we do is we talk to them on the streets. We run with small machines. We talk louder, right? We invite them to several events. Let's say a couple of weeks ago it was Mother's Day. So the local government decides to organize just a nice meeting with all the mothers of the district, right? So they invite us to that, and we inform them about our project, what we are doing with their children, and that's very important for us. That's also a very important communication channel. Of course, if we're in the cities, we will try to gain more space with the new communication technologies, right? We are using internet, we're having Facebook groups for the several projects. We're getting a lot of space there. But we have to realize as well that it's different to work in the urban area than in the rural areas. Rural areas are mainly coca leaf producers. Urban areas are usually transport routes, right? So you have to think about that as well. Youngsters will get involved in a different way. Some of them in rural areas will get involved in the production, right? But in the urban areas, they will get more involved in transporting, maybe micro-selling or other types of illicit activities. Well, in this sense, we have been gaining a lot of space as well. We have developed young journalists in several areas in Peru. We are working in more than 15 regions in the Peruvian country. And we have been providing them with skills in order for them to go to the radio, to the TV, and talk about why we have to fight against drug trafficking. When we started a youth project in the Central Andean Highlands in Peru, I remember that the press was very doubtful about talking about drug trafficking. You went to them like, you know, we have to talk about what is happening now in the rural areas. And they were a bit like, no, they were a bit worried about it. They didn't want to talk about so much about it. Probably they had a bit of fear. So we needed to talk constantly about it, to demonstrate that this topic has to be in the press. It's not possible that a big part of the economy is being run illicitly and the press doesn't say anything at all. So the fourth power has to be present. So we're talking with them, having meetings, informing them about what is going on, but also telling them about the positive news. You know, youth are doing good things, they're doing projects, they're developing alternative crops, they are running their own radio stations, they're probably your competition. So in that way, the press said, okay, let's talk about it. Show me the positive view of those areas. And therefore, step by step, we gain their trustness. And now, local press talks a lot about drug trafficking. And they're really concerned, and we hope that we are going to gain more spaces. In that way, not only through the press, but also through schools, we have been producing radio spots, TV spots, and those are well, produced by ourselves, but then all the radio, TV channels, they put them for free. That means that we believe they have a very social involvement in this mission, and we are very happy about it. We have a documentation center. We provide information, several research papers about what's going on in Peru on this issue. Every year we have a very important document called The Problem of Drugs. We release it every June, and we inform the Peruvian society how to deal with this illicit chain. I was talking about also how youth can promote actions. So, what we do, for example, is youth mainly are in schools. Let's say, if we talk about rural areas, youth will be either at school or either in the farm fields. Okay. Right? They help their parents to crop, unfortunately, mainly coca leaf. So our space, our positive space, is basically a high school. So we need to have, first of all, a good partnership with the teachers, with professors, which is not an easy task. It's very difficult. Sometimes teachers tell us, you know, you are doing a very bad thing, you are brainwashing you want to make us believe that coca leaf is not about our culture, that you guys just want to come up with the US intervention, capitalism, I don't know. Everything that they believe is a fear for them. So we have to explain them. It's about the Peruvian development, and it's actually our responsibility. So it takes months, probably years, to talk with teachers and to convince them that they have to take the role they are meant to. They are second parents, right? So they have to take that role. We talked several times with them. Some of them open the doors, others still close them for us. But when we achieve that, teachers become our main allies. And through this, we start training youngsters. What do we do with them? For example, they learn how to come up with a small project. Youth love so many topics. They love environmental awareness. They like to talk about how to prevent sexually transmitted diseases. They like to talk about how to avoid violence in their homes, because there are also a lot of violence in their families, right? And they want to talk about several topics that directly or indirectly lead to drug trafficking. So what we do is we provide them the opportunities to learn new skills, to develop their leadership, and to come up with a project that they implement in their own schools. Some of them were, for example, environmental campaigns. I remember there was once a forum, a video forum, organized by the youngsters themselves, and they were showing some videos about how chemicals, which are used for producing cocaine, are diverted in the rivers of the Peruvian rainforest. And they were teaching that to their own friends in the rainforest. So that was a very important step for us, because that means that they realize that drug trafficking is really harming their environment. Other youngsters like to talk about violence at home, and they realize that this violence is because also illicit activities lead to corruption and a violent society. So they come up finally to the same topic. And therefore, we expect to develop leadership among high school youngsters particularly. But we also work with other adults that come up with other ideas. I will come back later on in this final topic. So, about community actions, we have been working with schools mainly, with teachers and tutors, with adolescent students, with health professionals. The health sector is also one of our main allies. By the way, as an example, last week we received another good news that a new school decided to open their doors. Those are very good news for us, because as said, it takes months for us sometimes to get really this partnership. At the beginning they're very, well, they don't want to cooperate sometimes. We believe as well in entrepreneurial activities. Many people say, a lot of people say in these areas that they have to produce coca leaf because there is no other economic option. That's what they usually say. I managed to pay the education of my children thanks to coca. Is that really true? I mean, is that really true? That's the only option? We don't believe that. And we prove through entrepreneurial activities that illicit business can be developed and can gain sustainability and can provide an income for their families. For example, we are training youth over 18 years old on how to develop a business plan. Okay, we're not talking about a master degree on business plan, 2 years full-time certification. We're talking about a 3 or 4 months course. When we teach them how to come up with a business plan by playing, for example. Okay, let's play today that we're in the market. So you have to come up with your own toy, and I will give you just this recycled paper for doing that. So what do they do? Okay, they have to come up with something interesting, something creative. They learn how to sell. They realize how the marketing mix can be done at all stages, and they finally learn how to sell in a very proper way. They finally learn some basic budgeting. They learn how to come up, like how to realize their costs, how is the production process and all that, with basic skills. But these are very important for many of them, because they finally use their local resources in a sustainable way. As one of our volunteers said, maybe my parents may not want to change coca leaf fields, but I will. I want to do in the future the production of honey. I want to produce cheese. I want to grow more coffee. I want to grow more cacao, and so on. So we believe that entrepreneurship has to be also in the agenda, and we are talking a lot with municipalities because hopefully they will do this type of projects in their own district, financed by the government, right? Because it's our responsibility. In that sense, thousands of youngsters have been trained on these entrepreneurial skills. We have come out with several successful businesses, and these youngsters, these new businessmen and women, are going as well to the press to show their good case practices. What do we learn from our 26-year experience? We have to see grassroots organizations as allies. They're not just beneficiaries, and that's very important. They're not just our beneficiaries. They're not just the people sitting down and hearing us. They have to become the main actors. They have to become the heroes in their communities. So what we think is that we have to see grassroots organizations as our main allies, and then we have to develop partnerships with them, as much as important as with local authorities. We have to work very close, of course, with authorities as well, with local governments particularly, and we recommend that we technically assist them as well, because sometimes they lack of that. Sometimes authorities don't have secondary education or a major. So we as NGO are present there in order to support them as well, to give them some suggestions on how to do a good local economic development agenda, for example. We have to generate trust among local leaders, among parents, among children, among the local press. We need to promote leadership among youth. We believe a lot in this statement that youth are really agents of change. So we need to encourage them to come up with their own projects, to fail if it's possible. It's part of the game, right? So we need to give them the possibility to really have an active role in our community. And we need to promote entrepreneurship by training them, particularly women. It happened once that we invited several youngsters to be trained by ourselves on business plan, and unfortunately, not so many women show up. When we were asking in the neighborhood why did that happen, they told us that many parents didn't allow them to come to the trainings because they were supposed to work at home. So we need to talk as well once again with parents and change this point of view. We work with very important people at the national, regional, local, and international level. There are many allies, presidents, senators, congressmen and women, grassroots leaders. We network with all of them at all stages because drug trafficking can be solved back with the unity of the Peruvian society as a whole. We thank you a lot for your attention, and you can visit us at cedro.org.pe for further information. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's like there's a lot of work going on in Peru, but having visited Mexico through Carmen's invitation, I do also know that similar things are happening there. And it means in Latin America generally, anywhere else where you want to work with, we want to do something to prevent violence related to drugs or to make people understand that they can live life happily without using drugs. You have to work with every sector of society. And people who leave government behind also regret having done so because you can't do anything without the government. Thank you very much for the presentation. Do you have any burning questions for Piero or any comments that you want to make? Thank you. Yeah.